At the family reunion, my uncle said, "Isn't it time we controlled our women properly?" The words came out of Uncle Gary's mouth during dessert at the annual family reunion. About 40 of us were gathered at my aunt's lake house eating pie when he just said it. Casual, like he was commenting on the weather. I was 28 and sitting between my mom and my sister Emma. I felt them both go completely still. Around the table, every woman stopped mid-conversation, the kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. My dad laughed nervously and told Gary he'd had too much to drink, but Gary shook his head and said he was serious. That the women in this family had gotten too independent, too mouthy, and it was time the men stepped up. My cousin Jake nodded along. So did my brother-in-law, Chris. I glanced at my wife Rachel across the table. Her face was blank, unreadable. Then my mom stood up, said she needed to check on something in the kitchen. My sister Emma followed immediately, then Rachel, then my aunts Linda and Susan. Within 30 seconds, every woman over the age of 16 had left the table. The men sat there looking confused, but also kind of pleased with themselves. Gary was saying something about how women always get emotional when you speak truth. I excused myself to use the bathroom, passed by the kitchen and heard urgent whispers. Saw my mom on her phone. Emma was writing something down. Rachel was nodding, her expression intense in a way I'd never seen. When I walked in, they all stopped talking. Mom asked if I needed something. I said I was just grabbing water. The tension in that kitchen was thick enough to cut. I went back to the table but couldn't focus on the conversation. The men were talking about sports now, acting like nothing weird had happened, but something was definitely wrong. An hour later, I found Emma alone on the back porch. Asked her what was going on with all the women. She looked at me for a long moment, like she was deciding something. Then she said, "Do you remember when I broke my arm when I was 14? I did. She'd fallen down the stairs at Grandma's house. Except Emma's voice went quiet. I didn't fall, Tyler. Grandpa pushed me. I told him I wasn't going to keep quiet anymore about what he'd been doing to me since I was 9. My blood went cold. Emma kept talking, her words coming faster. Said it wasn't just her. Said Grandpa had done things to almost every girl in the family. And when they'd tried to tell, the men had protected him. Made excuses. Called them liars. I felt sick. Asked why she never told me. She said she tried to tell Dad when she was 12. He'd slapped her across the face and grounded her for a month for speaking badly about his father. Emma said the women had been meeting in secret for 3 years now, planning, gathering evidence, recordings, medical records, testimonies from 17 different girls across 4 decades. They'd been waiting for the right moment to expose everything. And Gary's comment at dinner, that was the trigger. I asked what she meant by trigger. Emma pulled out her phone and showed me a group chat with 23 women from our family, messages flying back and forth. They were implementing something they called Protocol Red. My mom had already called a lawyer. Aunt Linda was uploading files to a secure server. Rachel was contacting a journalist friend. They'd been ready for this for months, just waiting for one of the men to say something that proved they hadn't changed. That proved they still thought they had the right to control women. I looked back through the kitchen window, saw my dad and Gary laughing, completely oblivious. Asked Emma what was going to happen now. She said, "In about 10 minutes, 2 police cars are going to pull up this driveway, and everyone is going to find out what kind of family we really are." I heard sirens in the distance. Emma stood up, said she had to go back inside, that I needed to decide right now which side I was on. But when the police actually arrived and I saw who they were arresting first, I realized the women had been hiding something even bigger than I thought. And that's when everything I believed about my family shattered completely. The police cars pull into the driveway, blue and red lights cutting through the evening darkness. 2 vehicles, not the single car Emma had mentioned. Detective Rivera steps out first, her badge already visible on her belt. 3 uniformed officers follow behind her, fanning out with practiced precision. I stand frozen on the porch, my mind racing to catch up with what's happening. Emma squeezes my arm once, then walks down to meet the officers. The rest of the women emerge from the house in a unified front, my mom at the center holding what looks like a thick manila folder. "Tyler, come inside." Rachel appears beside me, her voice gentle but firm. "You don't need to see this part." Who are they arresting?" I ask, my throat dry. "Is it Grandpa?" Rachel's eyes fill with something like pity. "No, Tyler, not Grandpa." The back door slams open behind us. My dad storms onto the porch, face contorted in confusion that quickly morphs to rage when he sees the officers approaching. "What the hell is this?" he demands, looking at my mom. "Patricia, what have you done?" Detective Rivera walks directly to him, her stance shifting subtly. "James Mitchell, I'm Detective Rivera with the County Sheriff's Department. I need you to place your hands behind your back." "What?" Dad's voice rises an octave. "This is ridiculous. Whatever she told you is a lie. I can't move, can't breathe. This isn't happening. They're arresting my dad, not Grandpa, not the monster Emma described. My father." Rachel tugs at my arm as the officers handcuff Dad, reading him his rights while he shouts denials that echo across the lake. I let her pull me back inside the house, away from the scene unfolding on the lawn. Through the window, I see Uncle Gary being approached by another officer, then Chris, my sister's husband. "What's happening?" I ask, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Rachel, what's happening?" Aunt Linda stands in the kitchen, her laptop open on the counter. She looks up when we enter, her face grim but resolute. "Protocol Red," she says simply. "We've been planning this for 3 years, Tyler, since Emma finally told us everything." "But they're arresting Dad," I say stupidly. "Not Grandpa. Grandpa died last year," Linda reminds me gently, "but what he started didn't die with him," reminds her. Mom walks in, her face pale but composed. She sets the folder on the table and opens it, revealing neatly organized documents, photos, and what looks like transcripts. "Your father continued what his father taught him," she says, her voice steadier than I've ever heard it. "Different methods, but the same control, the same abuse." She pulls out her phone, taps a few times, and hands it to me. "Listen." Dad's voice fills the kitchen, low and threatening. "If you ever tell anyone what happened, Emma, I'll make sure you regret it. No one will believe you anyway. You're just a hysterical girl who wants attention." I hear Emma's voice, shaky but defiant. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." "You should be," Dad responds, his tone chilling. "Remember what happened last time you tried to speak up? A broken arm heals. Next time could be worse." The recording ends. I look up to see Emma standing in the doorway, her eyes red but dry. "He threatened me 2 weeks ago," she says quietly. "When I told him I was going to therapy, he was afraid I'd talk about what Grandpa did and what he did to cover it up." Outside, more sirens approach. Through the window, I see Uncle Gary being placed in a second police car, still shouting. Chris is being questioned by an officer, his hands cuffed behind his back. How many? I ask, my voice barely audible. 17 men in the family, Mom answers, her hand steady as she pulls out more documents. Dating back 40 years. We've documented everything. Medical records, threatening messages, financial control, psychological abuse. Everything they did to keep us quiet and compliant. Rachel sits beside me, taking my hand. Tyler, there's something you need to know. I've been part of this since before we got married. The betrayal hits like a physical blow. You knew? All this time? I had to be sure you weren't like them, she whispers. Your mom vouched for you. Said you were different. But I needed to see for myself. My entire world is collapsing around me. The family I thought I knew never existed. The father I respected is being driven away in a police car. The women I thought I understood have been living secret lives, gathering evidence, planning this moment for years. Emma sits across from me, sliding a thick binder across the table. This is what we found in Dad's office safe. Bank statements showing how he controlled Mom's inheritance. Emails between him and Grandpa about how to handle me after I tried to speak up. Records of psychological evaluations he had falsified when I was 16 to make me look unstable. Mom adds quietly, he controlled everything, Tyler. Our finances, who we could talk to, where we could go, just like his father taught him. Through the window, I watch as Detective Rivera speaks with my mom's sister, Aunt Susan. Susan points to the house, then hands over what looks like a USB drive. What's on that? I ask. Video evidence, Linda says. Security camera footage from Grandma's house that the men never knew about. She installed it secretly before she died. The realization that even my grandmother was part of this hits me hard. How long had the women been protecting each other while I remained oblivious? By midnight, half the men in my family are in custody. The lake house, once filled with laughter and the pretense of normalcy, now feels like a war zone in the aftermath of a decisive battle. The women move through the rooms with purpose, gathering more evidence, making calls, supporting each other with quiet efficiency that speaks of long practice. I sit alone on the back porch, staring at the dark water, trying to process the complete destruction of everything I thought I knew about my family, about my father, about myself. Rachel finds me there hours later. She doesn't speak, just sits beside me and waits. Did you ever really love me? I finally ask. Or was I just someone you needed to watch? She takes my hand, her grip firm. I loved you from the beginning, Tyler, but I also needed to be sure. The women in this family have been hurt too many times by men they trusted. In the distance, I can see lights from police cars still parked at the end of the driveway. Tomorrow, there will be questions, investigations, court dates, family members taking sides. But tonight, as the truth settles over me like a heavy blanket, I realize I'm going to have to choose who I really am, what kind of man I want to be, and whether I can ever forgive the secrets that have been kept from me, even as I try to understand why they were necessary. 3 days after the arrests, I'm staring at my phone as the CNN notification pops up. Family patriarchy exposed, multi-generational abuse ring uncovered. The headline makes my stomach turn. It's surreal seeing our family name splashed across national news, complete with aerial shots of Aunt Linda's lake house. 7 men from my family remain in jail, including my father. The bail hearings start tomorrow. I haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since that night. They're calling it the family conspiracy, Rachel says, sliding her laptop across the kitchen table to me. My friend Megan at the Tribune just published this. The article headline reads, Women's Secret Resistance, How 17 Victims Documented Decades of Abuse. There's a photo of Emma leaving the courthouse, flanked by Mom and Aunt Susan. How could you not tell me? I finally asked the question that's been burning inside me for days. 3 years, Rachel. We've been married for 2. You knew all this time. Rachel's face tightens. Would you have believed me? If I had come to you before we were married and said, by the way, your father and grandfather have been abusing women in your family for decades, and we're gathering evidence to have them arrested, I would have classed her. You would have thought I was crazy, she cuts me off. Or worse, you might have warned them. The accusation stings because I can't honestly say she's wrong. Rachel stands up and slowly unbuttons her blouse. I start to protest, confused by the sudden shift, but she turns around and lets the fabric fall from her shoulders. This is why I couldn't tell you, she says quietly. Thin white scars crisscross her back, some faded with age, others still raised and angry. My father, she explains, not turning around. From when I was 8 until I was 16, your mom was the first person I ever showed these to, 3 years ago, at the first meeting. I feel sick. I didn't know. No one knew. That was the point. She buttons her blouse back up and faces me. Tyler, the women in your family recognized what was happening to me because they lived it too. She pulls a thick leather-bound book from her bag and places it on the table. This is what Emma found in your grandfather's study after he died. Your dad never knew it existed. The journal is old. The page is yellowed. Inside, my grandfather's neat handwriting fills page after page with meticulous notes dating back to 1953. It's a manual, Rachel explains, her voice flat. Instructions for controlling women. He documented everything: financial manipulation techniques, psychological tactics, how to isolate victims from support systems. I flip through pages, feeling increasingly nauseated. There are entries about my grandmother, my mother, my aunt's detailed observations about their weaknesses and corrective measures applied. There's more, Rachel says, pulling out a USB drive. These are emails between your father and your grandfather from the last 10 years. Emma downloaded them from your dad's computer during last year's Christmas party. The emails are clinical, discussing family women, like livestock needing management. One from my father about Emma makes my blood run cold. She's becoming problematic like her mother was. Might need to handle her the way you handled Patricia in '92. We'll discuss options when you visit next month. What happened to my mom in '92? I ask, dreading the answer. Rachel's eyes fill with tears. She tried to leave him. He broke her arm and convinced the doctor she'd fallen down the stairs. Then he took control of her bank accounts and cut her off from her family for 6 months. My phone buzzes with a text from my cousin Jake. Traitors get what's coming to them. Tell Emma to watch her back. I show it to Rachel, who immediately takes a screenshot. This goes to Detective Rivera, she says. The threats have been constant since the arrests. The family has fractured completely. Half believe the women, half are calling it a conspiracy. Uncle Robert, who wasn't arrested, has been giving interviews claiming the women planned this to take control of family assets. There's something else you need to know, Mom says when she arrives an hour later. She looks exhausted, but somehow stronger than I've ever seen her. About Emma's broken arm when she was 14. Grandpa did that, I say, remembering what Emma told me. Mom shakes her head. That's what we told you. What your father made us tell you. But you were there, Tyler. You saw it happen. The memory hits me like a physical blow. Emma crying, Dad twisting her arm behind her back, the sickening crack, my mother screaming. I was 12. But I remember Grandpa. I trail off, confused by the conflicting memories. Your father convinced you it was Grandpa. He took you to that therapist, Dr. Winters, who was his college roommate. They spent 6 sessions rewriting your memory. The realization that my own memories were manipulated makes me physically ill. I barely make it to the bathroom before throwing up. When I return, Emma has arrived. She sits across from me, her eyes steady. They're planning something, she says without preamble. Jake and 3 other cousins were at the courthouse today. They looked organized. Rachel's phone pings with an email. It's from Megan. The full expose goes live tomorrow morning. Front page, digital and print. I look at these women, my wife, my sister, my mother, who carried this burden for years while I remained oblivious. They documented, planned, and executed a takedown of a system of abuse that spanned generations. What do you need me to do? I ask finally. Emma reaches across the table and takes my hand. We need you to choose, Tyler. Really choose. Because once this article hits tomorrow, there's no middle ground left. Outside, a car pulls into the driveway. Through the window, I see Jake and 2 other male cousins approaching the house, their faces set with purpose. The time for neutrality is over. I stand outside the county jail visitors area, my heart pounding against my ribs like it's trying to escape. 2 weeks have passed since the arrests, and I'm finally here to see my father. The metal detector beeps as I walk through, and the guard waves me forward with practiced indifference. Booth 7, he says, barely looking up from his clipboard. Dad looks smaller somehow, the orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame. His eyes light up when he sees me, relief washing over his face. Tyler, he says through the scratchy phone receiver. Thank God you're here. You have to help me. These women have lost their minds. I study him, searching for signs of the monster Emma described, the man in those recordings. All I see is my father, the man who taught me to fish, who cheered at my baseball games, who seems so normal. Dad. I start, not even sure what I want to say. I've seen the evidence. His expression shifts, almost imperceptibly. What evidence? Those doctored recordings? The so-called journals? It's all fabricated, son. Your mother and the others have been planning this for years. They want control of the family money. I reach into my bag and pull out a printout of the email he sent Grandpa about handling Emma. I slide it across the table. Is this fabricated too? I ask quietly. Dad glances at it, then pushes it back, taken out of context. Emma was going through a rebellious phase. She needed discipline. Discipline like a broken arm? The words taste bitter in my mouth. His eyes narrow. That was an accident. She fell down the stairs. I was there, Dad. My voice cracks. I remember now. You did it. You twisted her arm until it snapped, and then you made me believe it was Grandpa. Something shifts behind his eyes, a momentary flicker that sends ice down my spine. His mask slips, just for a second, but it's enough. You always were too sensitive, he says, his voice dropping to that quiet, controlled tone I now recognize from the recordings. Just like your mother. Weak, easily manipulated by hysterical women. Was Mom hysterical when you broke her arm in '92? I ask. Dad's knuckles whiten around the phone. Who told you that? Your mother? He leans forward, his face inches from the glass. She was going to leave me, take half of everything I'd built. What was I supposed to do? The admission hits me like a physical blow. He's not even denying it. You were supposed to let her go, I say. That's what decent men do. Dad laughs, a cold sound that makes my skin crawl. Decent men protect what's theirs. That's what my father taught me, and what I tried to teach you. Clearly, I failed. I stand up, unable to stomach another minute. You didn't fail to teach me, Dad. I failed to become what you wanted, a continuation of this sick family legacy. You'll regret choosing their side, he calls after me as I walk away. When this is over, remember who your real family is. Outside the jail, I throw up in a trash can, my body physically rejecting the poison of his words. 3 days later, I find Jake waiting in the parking lot of Emma's apartment building. He's leaning against his truck, baseball bat resting casually against his leg. What are you doing here? I demand, blocking his path to the building entrance. Jake's eyes are bloodshot, his movements jittery, just waiting to have a conversation with our cousin, family business. With a bat, I nod toward the weapon. Protection, he says with a smirk. These days, you never know when someone might falsely accuse you of something. I step closer. Emma's not coming down. Leave, Jake. Or what? You gonna side with the traitors? He grips the bat tighter. Those bitches destroyed our family with their lies. Someone needs to remind them what happens to liars. When he moves toward the building, I block him. The first punch catches me off guard. Jake was always quick. I taste blood as my lip splits, but I don't back down. We grapple on the pavement, the bat clattering away. Jake is stronger, but I'm fighting for something more important than family pride. A neighbor calls the police. By the time they arrive, Jake is pinned beneath me, his face bloody, screaming threats about what he's going to do to Emma, to all the women. The officers record every word. That's enough for a restraining order, Detective Rivera tells me later as paramedics clean my cuts. And with his prior record, probably enough for charges. I nod, wincing as the antiseptic stings. Add it to the pile. The grand jury convenes the following week. I sit in a wood-paneled room, 23 strangers staring at me as I describe the family dynamics I was too blind to see. The men controlled everything, I explain. Finances, social interactions, even medical decisions. The women were isolated, monitored, punished if they stepped out of line. A juror asks, and you never noticed any of this growing up? The question stings with truth. I was taught not to notice. We all were the sons, the nephews. We were shown a version of family life that looked normal from the outside. After my testimony, Mom takes the stand. She methodically outlines 30 years of psychological manipulation and financial control. How Dad convinced her she was mentally unstable whenever she questioned him. How he monitored her phone calls, limited her access to money, isolated her from friends. Emma testifies about Grandpa's abuse, Dad's cover-up, the threats when she tried to speak out. Aunt Linda presents financial records showing how the men siphoned money from the women's inheritances. retirement accounts, even children's college funds. Rachel provides documentation of the protocol-read meetings, 3 years of careful planning, evidence gathering, and preparation for the moment when they would finally break free. While helping Mom pack up Dad's office, I discover a loose floorboard beneath his desk. Underneath is a small safe we never knew existed. Do you know the combination? I ask. Mom shakes her head. Your father never shared anything important with me. It takes 3 days to get a locksmith with the right credentials. Inside, we find recordings dating back to the 1,970 seconds. Grandpa's voice instructing Dad and other male relatives on proper household management. Women respond to fear more reliably than love. Grandpa's voice crackles through the old tape. A fearful wife is an obedient wife. The tapes confirm what the women have been saying all along. This was a systematic, generational approach to controlling and abusing women, passed down from father to son like a family business. By the time the media storm hits full force, I'm standing firmly with the women. Conservative outlets run stories questioning their motives, calling it a feminist conspiracy to seize family assets. Social media fills with threats against Emma, Mom, and the others. Uncle Gary makes bail and immediately violates his protection order, showing up at the coffee shop where Emma works. I happen to be there, meeting Rachel for lunch. You lying little bitch, Gary snarls, lunging toward Emma behind the counter. You think you can destroy my life with your fantasies? I intercept him before he reaches her, shoving him back against a table. She's not alone anymore, Gary. None of them are. Security escorts him out, and within hours, his bail is revoked. But the message is clear. The patriarchs aren't surrendering without a fight. That night, extended family members from across the country begin arriving in town, uncles, cousins, and male in-laws who weren't arrested but share the same beliefs. They gather at a hotel downtown, planning their counterattack. They're trying to intimidate the witnesses, Detective Rivera explains during an emergency meeting at Mom's house. Classic abuser tactics when control fails. Escalate the threats. I look around the living room at the women who have endured decades of this treatment. My mother, my sister, my wife, my aunts, and cousins. Their faces show exhaustion, but also a determination I never noticed before. What do we do now? I ask. Emma, who's barely slept since Gary's confrontation, looks up with steel in her eyes. We finish this, all the way to the end. For the first time in my life, I truly see the strength that's always been there, hidden beneath the fear and silence they were forced to maintain. These women aren't victims, they're survivors who finally found their collective voice. And I'm going to make damn sure that voice is heard. 6 months after the arrests, I stand outside the county courthouse, watching the morning fog lift over the city. The air feels electric, charged with anticipation. Today, the trial of my father and the others finally begins. Ready? Rachel squeezes my hand, her eyes searching mine. I nod, though ready is the last thing I feel. How can anyone be ready to testify against their own father? The marble steps are crowded with reporters, their cameras tracking our approach like predators. Emma walks ahead with Mom, both of them wearing identical expressions of grim determination. They've been preparing for this day for years. I've had months. Inside, the courtroom feels too small for the weight it carries. Dad sits at the defense table alongside Uncle Gary and 3 other male relatives. He catches my eye as we enter, his face a perfect mask of fatherly concern. 6 months in jail hasn't diminished his ability to perform. Don't look at him, Rachel whispers, guiding me to our seats behind the prosecution. The district attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Marquez, approaches us before proceedings begin. Tyler, you're up third today, after your mother and Detective Rivera. Remember what we practiced. Just tell the truth. The truth. Such a simple concept that's become so complicated. When they call my name hours later, the walk to the witness stand feels endless. I'm sworn in, my voice barely audible as I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Mitchell, Marquez begins, can you tell the court about an incident involving your sister Emma when she was 14 years old? I clear my throat, finding Emma's face in the gallery. She gives me a slight nod. I was 12, I begin, my voice steadying. Emma and I were arguing about something I don't remember what. Dad came in and told me to go to my room. I pretended to, but I stayed in the hallway, watching. The courtroom is utterly silent. Emma said something. I think she threatened to tell Mom about finding Dad with another woman. He grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. I remember the sound it made when it broke. Like a branch snapping. Dad's attorney objects, claiming this is hearsay, but the judge overrules him. What happened after Emma's arm was broken? Marquez asks. Dad took us to the hospital. He told everyone Grandpa had accidentally knocked Emma down the stairs. Later, he took me to see Dr. Winters, who he said was going to help me with my confusion about what happened. And did you believe your father's version of events? I looked directly at Dad for the first time. Until 6 months ago, yes. I believed whatever version of reality he created for us. Dad's attorney tries to paint me as confused, manipulated by the women in my family. He brings up childhood memories, fishing trips, baseball games, college tuition, as if these normal acts of fatherhood somehow negate the abuse. Did your father ever hit you, Mr. Mitchell? He asks, his tone suggesting this is the only definition of abuse that matters. No, I answer honestly. He didn't have to. The men in our family reserved physical violence for the women. For the sons, they used different methods. Top. What methods? Marquez asks on redirect. They taught us that controlling women was normal. Expected. They conditioned us to ignore signs of abuse, to rewrite our own memories when necessary. They were creating the next generation of abusers. When I step down, Dad won't meet my eyes, but Uncle Gary stares at me with naked hatred, mouthing traitor as I pass. The trial lasts 3 weeks. 17 women testify about decades of systematic abuse. Financial records show how the men controlled every aspect of family resources. Medical reports document accidents that were anything but. The recordings, Dad threatening Emma, Grandpa instructing the younger men, leave no room for doubt. When the verdict comes, it's unanimous. Dad, Gary, and 3 others are convicted on multiple charges, ranging from assault to financial fraud. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, delivers sentences that ensure none of them will be free for years. The court recognizes this as a systematic pattern of generational abuse, she states. The sentences reflect not only the physical harm done, but the psychological damage inflicted on an entire family over decades. 2 months after the sentencing, Emma and I visit Grandma's grave. It's a crisp autumn day, leaves crunching beneath our feet as we approach the simple headstone. I never really knew her, Emma says, placing flowers against the marble. Not really. None of us did, I reply. They made sure of that. Emma kneels, brushing leaves from the base of the stone. Her fingers catch on something, a small metal box buried in the dirt, just visible at the edge of the grave marker. What's this? She murmurs, digging it out. The box is weatherproof, sealed tight. Inside is a letter in our grandmother's handwriting and a USB drive. My dear grandchildren, Emma reads aloud, her voice catching. If you're reading this, then the truth has finally come out. I knew what was happening but was too afraid to stop it. I've documented everything: bank accounts, property deeds, recordings. Use it to make things right. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. Love, Grandma Eleanor. The USB contains detailed financial records dating back 50 years, along with Grandma's own audio diary. She'd been secretly recording conversations, gathering evidence, planning a resistance she never lived to see. She knew, Emma whispers. All this time, she knew, and was trying to help in her own way. The discovery leads to a series of legal battles that end with substantial settlements for the victims. The women decide collectively to use the money to establish the Eleanor Mitchell Foundation for Family Abuse Prevention. It feels right, Mom says at the foundation's first meeting, using their money to help others escape what we endured. Rachel and I spend months rebuilding our relationship. Trust comes slowly, in small moments of vulnerability and truth. I keep thinking about what I would have done differently. I tell her one night as we sit on our apartment balcony. If I'd known sooner. If I'd seen what was happening. You were a child, Tyler, she says gently. They designed the system specifically so you wouldn't see it. You don't, but I became an adult. I should have noticed. Rachel takes my hand. We all have blind spots when it comes to family. The important thing is what you're doing now. What I'm doing now includes therapy twice weekly, where I'm confronting the toxic patterns I unconsciously absorbed. The casual dismissal of women's opinions, the assumption of authority, the reflexive defense of other men's behavior. It's like deprogramming, I tell my therapist. I'm finding these scripts in my head that I didn't even know were there. 1 year after the arrests, we hold a new kind of family reunion. The lake house is sold. Mom couldn't bear to keep it with its memories, so we gather at Aunt Linda's new home in the mountains. The difference is striking. Without the men who dominated every conversation, controlled every interaction, the family breathes differently. Laughter comes easier. Conversations flow naturally, without the constant undercurrent of tension. Emma makes her announcement during dinner, standing with her hand resting protectively over her stomach. I'm pregnant, she says, her voice steady. A little girl, due in February. The table erupts in celebration, but Emma raises her hand for silence. I wanted you all to know that she will grow up differently than we did. She'll know her own strength. She'll know her voice matters. And she'll never, ever believe that being afraid is normal. Later, as the evening winds down, Rachel, Emma, and I find ourselves on the back deck, glasses raised to the star-filled sky. To Grandma Eleanor, Emma says, who planted the first seeds of resistance? To Mom and all the others, I add, who had the courage to break the cycle? Rachel completes the toast, her eyes shining, and to the future, where the strength of this family is finally recognized for what it is, the women who held it together all along. Right as we drink, I realize that family isn't defined by blood or name or tradition. It's defined by love that doesn't demand control, by strength that doesn't require submission, by truth that isn't afraid of the light. The women of my family knew this all along. They were just waiting for the rest of us to see it too.